Hello again, my little conscripts, and welcome to another Mordian Glory video. In today's episode, we're going to have a little bit of a chit, and dare I say chat, about honest versus dishonest Warhammer. This is not a case of talking about people cheating or lying or anything like that. This comes down to the fundamental DNA of some factions. And I believe that knowing the difference between these two things can help explain why some factions get away with being powerful, addition in, addition out, and yet others, well, they get hated very quickly. And so, without further ado, let's fix bayonets and charge right into this thing.
Attention guardsmen, the Commissariat has detected you have not yet liked this video. Do so immediately or else you will face the Emperor's wrath. And anyone who has not yet subscribed to the channel will be transferred to the penal battalions. That is all. Move out!
So let's not mess about in this episode. Let's get right into the nitty-gritty meat and potatoes from the beginning and define what we mean by honest Warhammer and dishonest Warhammer. Let's begin with the positives. What is honest Warhammer and how do the factions that tend to engage in it operate? Well, it's pretty straightforward. They just do what they say on the tin. There aren't any hidden tricks. There aren't any gotchas. There's nothing that you need to be aware of, particularly at the beginning of the game. Because if you don't ask, can this unit do advance and charge, or this unit do fallback, or whatever, if you don't ask those questions, it's going to end up just catching you out and completely cooking you. Instead, you can look down at an army, and even if you've never faced it before, there's a good chance that you can just look at the units and understand what they do. Now, of course, I am massively biased about this whole thing, and so I am going to use Imperial Guard as an example of a faction which I think practices honest Warhammer, by and large, although there are a couple of exceptions here and there in the new codex. For the most part, if you look down at a Guard army and you see infantry, tanks, and artillery, without even being told, you will know what those units are going to do to you as the opponent. You'll know inherently the challenges that those units will pose to you and the obstacles you're going to have to overcome to try and achieve victory. For example, when it comes to the tanks, they are going to be tough. They're going to require some proper anti-tank to deal with, and they're going to be doing a lot of damage to you. So you need to be aware. You can't just run out into the open because you'll just get blasted off the table. Staging will be important. On the other hand, you look down at the infantry and you'll realize that there's a lot of objective control there. That's definitely going to affect your primary game. And also, if you've got anything in deep strike, you'll need to be aware that the Guard infantry can be quite good at screening you out. Lastly, when you see some artillery, you're going to know that maybe that 5-man unit that you were going to set on your home objective might need some help, and so you might decide to allocate some resources, some additional resources to holding objectives, rather than relying upon some very weak shit munchers to do that job. Everything that we've just talked about is stuff that you can discern without the Guard player having to tell you. And a really important factor here is you don't really need to worry about what the datasheet abilities of those various units are, because you know they're just going to enhance that role you've already worked out. There might be 3 or 4 different variants of Lehman Russ in your opponent's army, and you really don't care about the differences in the datasheet ability. You know they're all going to, in some capacity, make that Russ better at doing damage. But it's not just the units which are playing honestly. It also comes down to things like stratagems and detachment rules. Look at Hammer of the Emperor, for example. You could say that crash through was a bit of a gotcha. I mean, it allows a vehicle to go through terrain. They can't normally do that. But because it's something you can only use on vehicles and it's in a detachment, it's all about tanks being aggressive. In the context of that detachment, it's not really a gotcha or a trick. It's something that feels right and feels at home. On top of this, because it's something that people are very aware of, people know Guard tanks, crash through, all that good stuff. There's loads of memes about it. There's loads of examples of it. People have encountered it loads of times before. It doesn't really catch people off guard. In summary, honest Warhammer is where the army is straightforward. It does what it says on the tin. You can look down at the units, you know what they're going to do, the stratagems make sense, and you don't really feel like there's any gotchas or tricks that you constantly have to remind yourself of throughout the game. One of the biggest indicators of honest Warhammer is when you're at a tournament, you get paired into your opponent, you're having that sort of pre-game chat, and your opponent says, have you got anything like advanced charge? And you're like, no. Have you got anything like reactive moves? No. Have you got any fallback and XYZs? And they're like, no. And you can almost see the relief pour into them, like, oh, thank God. Because it's just a weight off their mind. They can just focus on playing the game without having to worry about what you're doing. They can just do what they want to do. That, I think, is the real indicator of whether a faction is playing honest or dishonest Warhammer. However, quick side note here, I do think it's important to point out that Guard isn't perfect, and there is nuance within factions, and we are talking about broad generalizations here. I've talked about Hammer of the Emperor being a relatively honest detachment, but then go and look at something like Recon Guard, where you have potentially 3 gotchas in one detachment. You have got the Tanglefoot Grenade, which completely can screw someone out of assault. You have got the reactive move with Draw Them Out. Reactive move is a classic case of dishonest Warhammer. And then you've also got the Courageous Diversion, which can act as a huge force multiplier. If your opponent isn't ready for it, it can completely throw them a curveball. So it is important to understand that while certain factions will be seen generally in a certain way, there are always exceptions that prove the rule. But speaking of dishonest Warhammer, let's now get into that. First things first, I want to say that I don't really like the term dishonest Warhammer. I think it comes with negative connotations. It comes with the idea that you're not playing the game properly or fairly or anything like that. And that's a load of bollocks, because the game is the game. And especially when we talk about things in a competitive sense, you should always be trying to win using the tools and tricks that are available to you as a faction. Whether those are straightforward sledgehammer tools or whether those are tricksy tools. So I don't like the term honest Warhammer. If someone has a better term, please suggest it down in the comment section below, and I'll start using that term going forward in like other videos. Maybe something like advanced Warhammer or tricksy Warhammer or sneaky hammer. I don't know. But like I said, I'm going to use the term dishonest Warhammer going forward now, but understand that I'm not doing it in a way to try and disparage against those factions which do engage in this kind of playstyle. I am very aware that there are certain factions whose whole identity is built around playing this way. And if they didn't play this way, it would feel wrong. So let's just go forward with that understanding in place. And now let's just talk about what I mean by dishonest Warhammer. It might sound kind of obvious, but dishonest Warhammer is basically the opposite of honest Warhammer. Rather than you looking down at an army and fundamentally understanding what each unit's role is going to be, you look down at an army and you're like, what the hell does that do? Each one of those units is going to have some crazy ability on its datasheet that you are going to need to have to take into account, because if you don't, it is going to catch you out and it is going to screw you over. Maybe it's some kind of reactive move, and if you forget about it and you move out to engage them, the enemy moves back and suddenly you can't shoot them anymore. Maybe it's something as simple as you can't target them within 18 inches of shooting. Maybe it's something like if they charge you, you don't get Overwatch, and you forgot about that for a moment. And you're like, okay, well, I've got my flamer guys ready. Oh no, can't do it. Now my whole plan's gone to shit. Sometimes this stuff is baked into the fundamental identity of the faction. A good example of this is something like Eldar, who are well known for being tricksy, both regular Eldar and Dark Eldar. And you've also got armies like Tau, which I would say now play a lot more honest Warhammer, but in the past were notorious for being a bit of a nightmare for players because they could do things like jump, shoot, jump. Sometimes it's not down to the army or the datasheets, but it can be down to the detachment. Like we said with Guard, you can have an army which fundamentally is meant to play honest Warhammer, but you start putting it in another detachment and it starts getting access to a whole bunch of new tricks of the trade which turn it on its head, and suddenly it's not playing honest Warhammer anymore. And sometimes you have an army which is fundamentally based around dishonest Warhammer, and they get even more tricksy when they get a detachment that really plays into that. What's kind of interesting as well is sometimes things which don't seem on the surface overtly tricksy can end up being massively dishonest Warhammer. Advance and Charge is a great example of this. Great example. I don't remember a game that I played where someone, if not both players, didn't ask each other, do you have advance and charge in your army? Because it's such a massive force multiplier, especially applied to units that are already very fast, or units that are already very choppy, or units that should be slow but then suddenly get weirdly fast. It's just so powerful, and you have to be aware of it, because if you forget about advanced charge even for a moment, there is a chance that it is going to absolutely just destroy you. One very important thing to take into account is that Dishonest Warhammer doesn't necessarily mean complex. Look at World Eaters, for example. In the index, I would actually say they were a dishonest faction, because they had widespread easy access to advance and charge, which meant that they could just banzai across the board, put incredible pressure on the enemy, and they also could bring Angron back at the drop of a hat. Now, I still think they can do the whole Angron thing, but Angron in general has fallen out of favor, so that's not a trick that's really something people have to worry about anymore. And then also, they don't generally seem to be advancing and charging anymore. Instead, look at something like Berserker Warband. There's some Berserker Warband armies that have been going around at the moment, which just involve like 80 to 100 Khorne Berserkers just coming at you. Interestingly, that Berserker Horde, I would say, is very honest, because you can just look down at it and very quickly identify what it's trying to do to you. It's running a lot of power armor. That power armor is going to be coming at you, and if you don't have the tools to deal with it, you're going to be in trouble. Although now I think about it, that probably isn't the best example, because Blood Surge is absolutely an example of a dishonest datasheet ability, because you have to be aware of it all the time. If you're not, it could cost you the game. And that, I think, is the definition of Dishonest Warhammer. It's not about how complex it is. It's not about how many buffs you can stack. It's not about how tricksy it is. It's about the mental strain, the mental load that your army is putting onto the opponent. They can't just focus on their own army. They constantly almost have to be half playing your army as well. And I think it can lead to some frustrations. It can lead to some people getting a bit burned out and just a bit tired of dealing with an army which they constantly feel like they have to be on their toes, because if their concentration just slips for a moment, then the opponent will take advantage of it. And if we drill down into this even further, I think it starts to explain why some factions can be hated, but not even that powerful. And hate is a strong word. Disliked, but not even be that powerful. And some factions can be really powerful, but people are kind of weirdly okay with it. Two good examples of this historically are Guard versus Tau and Eldar versus Necrons. Guard and Tau are both fundamentally shooting armies, and yet even when Guard is quite powerful, they tend to get away with it. People don't tend to mind. As long as it's not for an extended period of time and it's ruining the meta in general, people don't have such instant animosity and negative feelings when Guard are a bit more powerful. Because fundamentally, Guard has, and historically Guard has played honest Warhammer. Tanks are just going to shoot you a bit, infantry's going to mob you a bit, artillery's going to bash things from out of line of sight. Maybe we've got some ogres in there, brawling in combat, but it's simple, it's straightforward. You look at it, you understand it. And then you go over to an army like Tau, which fundamentally is the same, does lots of shooting, but they've had historical mechanics like drones being able to tank everything, and jump, shoot, jump, and all sorts of other like bullshit mechanics. Both armies fundamentally work in very similar manners, but one is historically people are okay with it, and one historically people aren't okay with it, and it comes down to the fact that one has been playing honest Warhammer and one has been playing dishonest Warhammer. Now, I would say in 10th edition, GW has done a really good job of actually just allowing Tau to play honest Warhammer. I think they've really done a good job. Taking away the bullshit with drones has been a big step in that direction. And even with the recent update to the Greater Good making it very powerful, I actually like it, because I don't mind it being very powerful, because it's very straightforward. This unit looks at that unit, now everyone gets +1 to hit. I like New Tau. I'll say it. And I like it because they're playing honest Warhammer. Another small example is Eldar versus Necrons. Everyone knows that Eldar have been historically broken, and they've always been very tricksy, the perfidious Eldar, and all of that kind of good stuff. And then if you compare this just baked in fundamental bullshit that tends to be the Eldar, and then you come over to something like the Necrons, who are in the past have been unbelievably powerful. If you look at like 7th edition with the Decurion attachment, oh my god, it never died. But funnily enough, there's a difference. When you get beaten by Eldar, sometimes it can be like, oh, they just, no matter what I did, they just danced around me. My units were obliterated. There's nothing I can do. Every time I tried to shoot them, they danced away. Every time I tried to engage with them, I felt like I couldn't, like I was wading through treacle. It was just a nightmare. And then you play against Necrons, it's like, oh, well, how did the Necrons beat you? Oh, because they just wouldn't die. Yeah, they just, it was very simple. They marched at me, I shot and shot and shot and shot, and the Necrons just blew me away. I could kind of see it coming from a mile off, but meh, it's what it is. It's Necrons. You can see the difference in those two armies there. One is beating you, and it feels like you can't get a fair punch in. The other one, it beat you, even if it was overpowered, it beat you, but it felt less egregious. Once again, I will remind you that we are talking in broad generalizations, and I am sure there will be some people smashing the keyboards right now going, oh, but Necrons can do all these kind of bullshit tricks. Absolutely. Every faction has got some tricks in there. Of course, we were talking sort of broad brush and historical, and if you have got those examples, please, I'm not discouraging you from telling me what they are. Get them down in the comment section. I'd love to know what they are. But you know what? I think that just about covers it. And it is important to say that all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you guys think down in that comment section. Which factions do you think play honest Warhammer? Which factions do you think play dishonest Warhammer? And do you think that it breaks down further at the detachment level? Have you got an example of a detachment that you think plays particularly honestly and you never mind getting beaten by it, even if it's overpowered? And on the flip side, have you got a detachment that you always loathe playing into? If you enjoyed today's video, then please don't forget to go ahead and smash that like button. It's always a really big help with boosting the video with the YouTube algorithm. And I'd be very grateful if you could also subscribe if you haven't already done so. We are trying to reach 80,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Redfield, 32, Jurgens, Miasma, Try Again, Bragg, RJ, Scorpion, Bonbon Vert, Lord Pryor, Nicholas Walsh, John Stubbs, Guardian, Varney, Sword, Fish Trombone, Picklock the Forged. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.